help the team. But I don't necessarily agree with that. It might give you some extra money, but I think what would help the team is really, getting some assets and being a positive team in a few years rather than what they've been doing right now.
Yeah, the one solution I do see for Charlotte, should they resign Kemba Walker, would be facilitating some type of 3-team trade, including Miami, where they could perhaps send Batum to a team like Cleveland, to a team like Atlanta, to a team like Sacramento, a team willing to take it out with a draft asset, taking back a Hassan Whiteside in return from Miami. And what this would accomplish would be ridding themselves of a bunch of contracts after the 2019-2020 season. Contracts like Kid Gilchrist, Marvin Williams, and obviously in this situation, Hassan Whiteside. And that would open up a ton of cap space for them in 2020, even though there's not a lot of good free agents for 2020. This would reasonably allow them to build around Kemba Walker through free agency in 2020. I would say that's the absolute best outcome for them. It's an outcome I'm proposing in a series of articles I will be putting on the NBA Trade Zone website, going through each team and deciding what is the best possible scenario for each team heading into the 2019-2020 season, giving like a very early preview of what would be the best outcome for each team for next season. So please check it out. It will be coming out really soon. But yeah, that is the one proposal I would make for Charlotte should they decide that, should they resign Kemba Walker? Should Kemba Walker resign there?
All right, let's move on to the Detroit Pistons.
Shooting.
Yeah, but it might be hard to come by just because there's not a lot of assets they have, and they're probably the best asset. One of their best assets would maybe be Luke Kennard, who is actually their best shooter.
He hasn't been good this year.
Well, he is not. And then, obviously you've got the Stanley Johnson ordeal there, the guy who hasn't really panned out. I do think that the interesting thing would be, I know that I do think that the trade for John Wall would be.
I was just about to say the same thing. This is the one team that should be pushing. Not that should be thinking about that, should be pushing for a John Wall trade. They have absolutely nothing to lose. They should be the only team in the league pushing for a John Wall trade.
I mean, and you're not going to give up a lot, of course, if you're the Detroit Pistons, but you just, you go like, hey, I'm going to give you a few players. Obviously, Reggie Jackson's going to be involved for salary. But I'm going to give you a couple assets, nothing extremely good. But I will get John Wall, and I'm going to start filling arenas in the seat. I'll be a pretty interesting team to watch. I do think John Wall and Blake Griffin would be interesting. And I'm obviously not going to win championships in the next 5 years. But I'm going to be that one team that does make the playoffs every year in the East. Mm-hmm. And then I have at least 2 superstars who are fun to watch. And that's what happens. And I don't think that would be a terrible idea. And then for me to argue to get John Wall on a team is very difficult.
No, I think the most you have to give up, not the most, I think it would be very reasonable. You have to give up Luke Kennard probably and a first-round pick. Obviously with a few contracts like Reggie Jackson, John Lure, perhaps a Langston Galloway, you probably want to keep him a little bit.
But if you're Pistons, I'd say, you know what, don't even say the first-round pick.
I think you'd have to get Washington bite on it. I think you'd have to give up a first round pick.
Well, I mean, Washington probably wants 3 first round picks with how they value John Wall.
They know they're not getting it. They might say that. Obviously, it's a ploy, but it's a facade to try to build up his trade value. They know they're not getting it.
All right, so now we're going on to the top 5 teams. These are the teams that have been really winning in the East. The Boston Celtics, the obvious one here is Anthony Davis, but what I will say before that is what their wish list is to Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum to start playing a little bit better, and Sacramento to start playing worse.
Oh, yeah. Well, that a good thing for them is, I mean, the Clippers have to remain in the playoffs for that pick to be theirs, which it should happen. Memphis looks like it will be just on that border.
It's top 12 protected.
Top 12, yeah. Memphis is top 12 protected, I believe. No, Memphis might be top 10, top 8.
I think it's top 12 this year, top 8 next year.
Let me take a quick look. There's so many protections to all these picks. I mean, not so many. We're going to take a quick look at it now. From LA, it is lottery protected, like I said. From Memphis, it is top 8 protected. in 2019 and top 6 next year.
Oh, because it was top 12 last year.
Yes. So I think they should definitely get Memphis pick. Sacramento, I still think will drop out of the playoffs. I think that might be somewhere between 10 and 14. Same with Memphis, probably somewhere between 10 and 14, maybe 15, 16, depending on where they end up in the playoffs. Clippers, 15 through 18. And even Boston's pick might be 20, 21, 22. I mean, they should have 4 picks. I like this goal for them. I like the fact that you came up with this here because, I mean, like you said, obviously Jaylen Brown has to get better. Perhaps finding a trade partner for Terry Rozier that you could come up with.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I like the Terry Rozier trade. I mean, obviously they like him, but I do think Terry Rozier is one of the reasons why he's kind of struggling this year is because he's just not getting those minutes, starter minutes. He'd be much better. I think the interesting thing you brought up was Jonathan Isaac. I do think Terry Rozier is worth a little bit more than Jonathan Isaac because Jonathan Isaac had, been 2 years in the league. Obviously, last year was injured, but that doesn't count. That doesn't make it very positive. So some of the hype that was behind it has died down. And, this year he's playing all right, but he's not playing that great. And, that would kind of get rid of the logjam they have with some of the big guys in Orlando. And they would give him a needed point guard who's still relatively young. I mean, he's just coming off his rookie contract's going to be ending this year.
Well, yeah, and I think what would be good in a Terry Rozier trade would begin, and again, I proposed this in a Bradley Beal trade where they could perhaps get a Bradley Beal packaged with a Tomas Saransky, and they could trade away a Terry Rozier, Jaylen Brown, and Gordon Hayward, perhaps sending Terry Rozier to a third team since they are obviously Washington already has John Wall. And that way they could get back a Tomas Saransky who is a good backup point guard, will not complain about minutes, and will cost them less than Terry Rozier. And I think that's what they should be looking in a Terry Rozier trade. Someone they could pick up who will not cost them as much as Terry Rozier will going into restricted free agency. Rozier will realistically probably cost them anywhere between 10 and 12 million. If they could get a player who costs them between 5 and 8 million, that would be very reasonable for them.
Yeah, I can't disagree there. I do think that it's an interesting thought process to add Bradley Beal and get rid of those 2 players, Brown and Hayward. And I do like Satoransky as well. All right, so now it's the Philadelphia 76ers. My thing would be, and I don't know how to do this, but add more depth to the team.
Well, here's how I think they could do it. I'm giving up a lot of what will come out in my series here, but I think a series of, they have so many second-round picks, and not only do they have second-round picks, they have good second-round picks. They have a lot of good second-round picks over the next 3 years, not to mention Miami's unprotected 2021 if they really want to use it. But they could use players, they could package players such as Wilson Chandler, Mike Muscala, Markelle Fultz, along with these second-round picks, and reasonably get 3 players on nice contracts that will help them build up their depth. And I think here's the thing about their offseason coming up. Yes, even if they resign Jimmy Butler, they will have over $20 million to spend in free agency. However, if they want to resign JJ Redick, well, there goes some of that cap space because he's got a cap hold on him. So I think what would be a little bit smarter for Philadelphia to do going into this offseason would be acquire these players that I'm talking about. 3 players out there such as Evan Fournier's, Justin Holiday's, shooters, big guys, maybe a Markieff Morris, guys, maybe a TJ Warren if Phoenix is willing to trade him. These are guys that they could acquire, and then instead of spending their money in free agency, simply resigning these players, keeping their cap holds, and that way they don't have to worry about not being able to resign JJ Redick, and they will have their mid-level exception to spend that way, which they would not have. They would only have their room exception should they decide to spend their money in free agency.
Yeah, I mean, if possibly they can do this, then go for it. It might be interesting to see what teams are what they're able to get.
Well, it depends on how teams value these second round picks. They have a lot of them. They could trade them all. What will they need them for? If they already have enough depth, they will not be able to need to draft these guys, specifically since they still have all the first round picks, which are a little more valuable, obviously.
All right, so now we have the Indiana Pacers. I mean, we've brought up names like Aaron Gordon in the past, who I still think would be a great fit. The good thing for the Indiana Pacers right now is both Sabonis and Miles Turner have really improved their games this year. I mean, Miles Turner, I believe, is second in blocks. The best thing for them would be is find a way where both of them can be on the court at the same time. But they're both playing, the same position. So I don't know exactly, because you wouldn't want to give up one of these two players in a trade for Aaron Gordon or somebody else right now, just because of how well they've been playing.
You don't think so? I mean, I was going to propose that actually. It's a Miles Turner and again, it can't happen. Realistically, it can't happen until the offseason if it's straight up Miles Turner, because Miles Turner's got that poison pill contract where it accounts differently for both teams, the team trading for him and the team training him. So he might be a little harder to trade, but you don't think perhaps in the summer trading Aaron Gordon for a Miles Turner would be...
Miles,
a 3-team...
I really like how they've been playing this year.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, I propose a actual 3-team trade where they could perhaps get Dallas involved and send Turner to Dallas and DSJ to Orlando, because Dallas might be looking to trade him, but...
Can you DSJ?
Yeah, Dennis Smith. Jr.
Oh, okay. To Orlando for who? For Miles?
Well, for Miles Turner going to Dallas, Aaron Gordon going to Indy. Obviously, maybe a couple second rounders involved.
Yeah, Dwight Powell, obviously for this year it'd be pretty hard for Dallas.
It wouldn't be able to. I mean, it would be extremely hard to work it out this year, but this would be an off-season trade.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe it is worth it to get Aaron Gordon. I really like Miles Turner's defense. Obviously, his rebounding, it hasn't been where it should be, but I would like the fit, too. Yeah, but I would like the fit of Miles Turner to pretty much becoming the DeAndre Jordan of the future for the Dallas Mavericks, and I do like the fit of DSJ going to Orlando, because they don't have a point guard, and that kind of gets rid of the logjam of big guys at the team.
Yeah. I think what I think they need, at least for the remainder of this year, is pretty simple. You don't need that much. You have a logjam at the guard position. Trade up a Tyreke Evans for a volume 3-point shooter. They're good efficiently at 3-point shooting. They're not making a lot of them. Anthony Tolliver for Tyreke Evans. So and Jared Bayless for Tyreke Evans to make salaries match. I think both teams could use what they're getting in return. Tyreke Evans is a good rebounder at the guard position, which I think Minnesota needs. But more specifically, they just need someone who could score and rebound the ball a little bit. I mean, I know a stretch four would maybe work better for them. A Markieff Morris, I don't think he's available, so it might be a little harder to do. But yeah, I think at least for the remainder of this year, try to just pick up, if you're Indiana, try to pick up a 3-point shooter.
Yeah, I can't disagree there. Picking up a 3-point shooter is always a good way to go. All right, so now the top 2 teams, we have the Milwaukee Bucks, who are currently in second place. Another team that has a good future because of Giannis Antetokounmpo, but really doesn't have a lot of flexibility, in my opinion, to get better through trades or even through free agency this summer.
I think you're wrong there. I think that they do have a decent amount of... With that trade they pulled off, they have a decent amount of cap flexibility for the summer. In terms of... I mean, again, it's going to the... Well, here's the thing, okay? Yes, Malcolm Brogdon, Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez, and Eric Bledsoe, all free agents. That's a lot. However, Malcolm Brogdon, Chris Middleton, relatively small cap holds compared to how they've been playing. What I mean by that is that their cap holds, Chris Middleton's is $19.5 million, Malcolm Brogdon's is under $2 million. So they could theoretically use a lot of their cap space and, taking those cap holds into account, and then re-sign those guys once they cross that tax hold. You could re-sign Eric Bledsoe. I mean, what do you think realistically Eric Bledsoe will be worth?
I mean, I think his worth would have gone down than the $15 million he was getting this year.
I think he's at about $15 million. Because of the fact that the salary cap will be increasing, I think you have to take inflation into account. So I think he'll be worth about $15, $16 million. Anywhere between 14 and 16, I'll say.
Yeah, I mean, but what do you think that they have enough money to get someone for how much?
Well, so here's that. So you could re-sign Bledsoe for about $15 million. do that. You know, you don't re-sign Bledsoe. Middleton and Brogdon right away. Realistically, if you wanna stretch Tony Snell,